True Crime Grapevine fans. Okay, here's the big second trial of the bad moms. Your favorite bad mom and mine, Lori Vallow, or Lori Vallow Daybell, if, you know, you're Chad, I guess. All right. Well, this was a nail biter. It was very hard to know which way the jury was going to go with this case, right? Here's a drawing of the court. Why a drawing of the court? Let me see if I can get it just a little bit. Oh, you don't want me in there. Just a little bit closer. Can you see of the court? It was a hand-drawn picture of the court. Why? Because there was no media. Thanks, Judge Boyce. But the pictures weren't bad. The thing about, we did have audio. It would come out after the day was done. And I'll tell you about the sources that I used because they're very good and they'll be good for Chad Daybell's case. Thank God it was all guilties. We were all sort of worried. The interesting thing was that the defense down here, yeah, they didn't even put on a case. They were like, the prosecution hasn't even proved it. So that really helped too. I mean, they didn't put on a defense because I guess Lori didn't want them to put on a defense. It was very odd. They tried really hard during their, what do you call that? It's that, you guys, it is like 1 o'clock in the morning on June 20th as I'm filming this. I just want to make sure that I give you guys the due diligence here, but I'm a little tired. I'm sorry. So, on cross-examination, they did a very good job trying to get some points in, but you know, this is the Lori Vallow case. It was kind of stacked up. And let me just tell you, besides what we already knew, I mean, the fact that she never reported her kids missing, the fact that they were found in her new husband's backyard buried, the fact that, again, didn't report him missing, still took money from Social Security, made sure the money was all routed into her bank account. Besides all of that stuff that we already knew, here were the biggest shockers. So there were recordings of jail calls, and Colby's, her son, and Summer Shiflett, her sister, oh my gosh. Besides being so sad and emotional, when Summer is crying, she, unlike Lori, is so full of emotion. She's saying to Lori, you were dancing on the beach while your kids were dead in the ground. And Lori responded something, and no, like, there wasn't a huge amount of people that said anything about this, but she actually said something like, well, they had been gone for months. Okay, number one, admitting that she knew they were dead for months. This is when Lori was in jail, right after she was, I think before she was declared incompetent. And so she's admitting that she knew that they were dead in the ground, and that by the time she got married, you know, she's like, well, it wasn't like I was happy, right? I mean, it wasn't like they had just died, right? Oh, she's the mother of the year, isn't she? The text messages that were recovered, they tied everything together. So it was very interesting the way the prosecution stated some things, but you're like, well, yeah, but exactly how would you know this? And then at the end, they brought back people and then produced like nails in the coffin. So these text messages, most shocking, okay, to me, the most shocking were that Chad and Lori were talking about Melanie's children, like they were dark. And Chad was like, do you want me to torture them during the car ride? And saying, and there was a discussion about, like, Melanie was sad that the children were dark, but she understood what had to happen. So this is all to say, thank God Brandon Boudreaux was smart enough, Melaniese's ex, that he got those kids away from Melanese. Do you remember when Melanese, which is Melanie Petrowski now, went to Brandon's house with Al, was found in the car sitting down the road. She went to his family's house and she was in the garage saying that my kids are in there, my kids are there, and the police were called, and she was trying to convince the police that she had custody to take them right then, and then she was asking for a victim's advocate. Anyway, if she would have gotten her hands on those kids, allegedly, just my opinion, don't sue me, they would have gone the way of Tylee and JJ, maybe. I'm just saying, the way these text messages, calling them dark, saying that Melanie's knew, but she wasn't so happy, but she understood. The fact she got pregnant so fast with Ian Pawlowski's baby, like she was just going to start a new family, I guess. I don't know. But they had been discussing, most of her children were like dark. So we know what dark means. You have to go. You're a zombie. So that was all very freaky, how openly they were talking about it. And the other text messages about Tammy turning into Viola, about Al being stupid because he couldn't get things right after the paintball shooting on Tammy. So there was a lot of text messages confirming that Lori knew that Tammy was supposed to be, you know, transitioning. That she was mad that Al was stupid and couldn't get the job done right. It all seems to point towards she knew it all. Because Tammy's death was the one that it was unclear if they could pin that on her as well. But with those text messages, it was much easier to see the through line, I would say. But the shocker was, like, they were openly talking about Melaniese's kids. Melanie Boudreaux / used to be Boudreaux. Anyways, thank God Brandon did get the kids away. Another kind of shocking thing was the testimony by Chad's neighbors. So they had lived there the whole time. They knew Tammy. They had done church work with Tammy. They seemed very supportive of his ministry. I'm not saying that they were believers, but maybe. He even asked them to mortgage their house to get Lori out of jail when it was just the kids being missing. They noticed that Chad and Lori's relationship, they talked about that it was very quick. Right after Tammy's death, they found it way too fast. They said they acted like teenagers, and that wasn't like Chad. So they did not mortgage their house. They have stepped back from, I believe, following Chad anywhere. So that was good. But it was just crazy, the fact that, I don't know. It's just that there was confirmation of the relationship. I don't remember if they also were told that Tammy was going to, early. Okay, and a really big shocker. There was one of Lori's friends, a follower, that we found out later wasn't Lori's friend. It was a friend first of Melanie Gibb and Chad's. It was Audrey, I'm not going to say her name right, Barterio. And her testimony was towards the end on day 16. She said that Lori told her, she was so naive and stupid that she'd follow anybody anywhere. I think it's when she was Audrey was gonna leave, and then Lori just sort of flipped out on her. And she said that she would cut Audrey up and bury her where she couldn't be found, and sort of implied that she had done that before. So, yeah, Audrey, she was pretty deep into the group. She was the one who had moved to Missouri. I don't know if you remember that Missouri, Jackson County, especially in Missouri, is supposed to be, it's of importance to Mormons. That's where they think the Garden of Eden will be. Anyway, Melanie and Lori had visited Audrey in Missouri. And she was part of their group, but when she started to sort of get nervous, that's when, I don't know, it was crazy that Lori said she would kill her by cutting her up and burying her where she couldn't be found. You know, Chad's backyard, I guess. So, this is Lori's new mugshot, and we found out that how she gets her curls is by doing those braids. So I guess she had to have a mugshot before her curls were done. But yes, it said, I just wrote, she stole the spotlight again because her mugshot was the talk of the town when it came out. She also has new murder charges in Arizona, you know, for Charles. So that's nice. Oh, I'm sorry. Her new murder charges in Arizona are for conspiring for Brandon Boudreaux's, the shot that happened in the Jeep. And we're all wondering, so where's Melanice in all this? Is she going to be charged? Is she an unindicted co-conspirator? What is going on with Melanice? Because she was in deep with that. In my opinion, just my opinion, allegedly. Don't sue me. Already there has been, so there's, already she had outstanding murder charges for Charles. So these extra charges, I think they were like unsealed. They just didn't want to unseal them before the other trial was over. So Arizona is planning on extraditing and prosecuting Ms. Vallow. Sorry, Lori. Now, here's important dates and one thing that happened since I was putting this all together after the actual trial had been over. Her sentencing is July 31st, which is interesting. It's Harry Potter's birthday, so magical. And it will be 9 a.m. at Fremont County Courthouse. Her request for a new trial was denied, and I say duh because it was ridiculous. If you want, I'll tell you who to watch if you want a good discussion on that. But what's important to know in the short term is it was denied, and she will be sentenced on July 31st. There will be more appeals, but that request was denied. And then Chad's trial has been scheduled. He wanted it in the summer of next year in 2024. And the prosecution wanted it in the fall. And so they settled on April 1st, April Fool's Day. Couldn't think of a better day, right? He's the ultimate fool. So very apropos, in my opinion. Just my opinion. All right. That is the Lori Daybell Vallow update. Phew. Ding dong. The witches behind jails. In my opinion. Just my opinion. Sorry, I shouldn't give witches a bad name, right? So we have not heard the last of Lori. Unfortunately, not only do we have Chad's trial coming up, but we have another trial that will be happening in Arizona about Charles and Brandon's attempted murder. So we will have to live with Lori Vallow for a while, people. If you're not Mormon, you might want to drink. There are 2 books by 2 YouTubers coming out. One is by a lawyer, Lori Vallow. She's a great resource. She's still doing she's still doing her, what is that called? Dyslexic moment. Tip of the tongue syndrome. Her newsletter that comes out. You can sign up for an email at the Lori Vallow Story, I believe. And she's on Twitter. You can follow her. Here, let me just tell you. My best main squeezes, so for the trial that I was following, that gave really good detailed updates. And all along the case, in fact, Gigi McKelty started doing Pretty Lies and Alibis with Fruit Loop. Fruit Loop came back to talk about the end of this trial. They started their YouTube channel when the children were found that day. And she had been a trial follower before and had some experience with going to trials. I think Jodi Arias was her first trial. Anyways, she has been working with, oh, now I'm going to forget which network it is. I think it's the Law and Crime Network. And she was a correspondent, and she did great work throughout this trial. She's said she's going to write a book about the case. I'm not sure what her perspective will be, but boy, if you followed all of her, she said she did like a who's who. She did recaps. She's done, I mean, she knows all about this trial. So, I mean, one of the best things though is her colloquialisms and her way of talking is just very pleasant to listen to. She's got a great accent. Definitely go over to Pretty Lies. If you're watching me, you're already watching her. But if not, if you just suddenly found the YouTube and I don't know why you'd watch me and not her, go watch Gigi. Nate Eaton. He did great recaps as well. I would watch both of their recaps each day of the trial. Because I didn't want to listen to the whole audio. I wanted even a concise recap of the trial. Took an hour or so, maybe 45 minutes. But anyways, Nate Eaton of East Idaho News, has been on this for forever as well, and went every day to court. He is a great resource. You can find him on, he does stuff for East Idaho News, but he also started his own Court Insider. I'm going to sneeze. I'm sorry. Pardon me. More of my main squeezes, Lori Vallow. She is an attorney, and her YouTube is Children of Darkness and Light. She is a lawyer. She's worked in Idaho. She lives in Boise now. She moved, like, her book should be fabulous. She used to be on Hidden True Crime with Lauren Matthias. Lauren is a journalist, mom, and host of Hidden True Crime with her husband, who is a criminal psychologist. I am an educational psychologist, so I study typical development, motivation. Criminal is very specific and heavy on the identification and interviewing and identifying people who have been arrested. It's really interesting. But anyways, her husband does that, so he can speak obviously to the criminal mind. And Lauren is also has a Mormon background and has grown up in the area, and she has a very astute understanding of the religiosity aspect. Lori Vallow was called Cult Mom. The trial focused on power, sex, and money. That was the big three that were the themes. But religion, it has a place. Speaking of cults, I think if you really want to understand what motivates Lori, and if you want to understand what's going to be, even more part about why this happened, you want to follow Mormon Stories podcast. Mormon Stories podcast is a podcast by Dr. John Delane. He has the best guests. I specifically recommend that you find his guest, Dr. Stephen Hansen, because it is unbelievable. And then there were two about growing up with Lori Vallow by Megan Connor, her cousin, and there was a Mormon influence on Chad and Lori Daybell. They're so fascinating if you want to really understand the basis for their religion. I highly recommend that specific episodes of Mormon Stories. And then Mike King is a retired, semi-retired, he still does a lot of consulting work, a detective from Utah. So he understands the Mormon community but he worked specifically with a different religious cult at the time. And he has a lot of information mixing both the law enforcement and like working on cases with cult aspects, criminals, children type issues. So highly recommend that. And then lastly, again, this is along the lines of the Mormon stories, but my favorite new main squeeze for understanding cults is Cults to Consciousness, and the host is Shalise Ann Sola. Let me just tell you, she always starts out talking about how these groups are... now I'm not going to remember what she says. You have to watch her show. It is important to understand like what happened with Lori and Chad. Their beliefs in Mormonism morphed into this more cult, like more defined cult that was fundamentalist, but the aspects were already sort of the seeds were embedded in other things, the beliefs that they had been brought up with in some respects. Anyways, she can explain it better than I can. It is interesting how normal people can have their beliefs made sort of twisted in a way that to them doesn't seem like a cult, but it takes away their agency. It's very interesting. I highly recommend. I'm not giving it a good enough explanation, but check out Cults to Consciousness. Okay. Now I'm going to go on to my next story. Hold on.